Welcome back to From Within She Rises. Today we're going to do a little pivot and we are going to do a little Nourish the Spiral episode, which is now what all of my kind of nervous system slash nutrition episodes are going to be called. Let's start by dropping in. So I'd like you to just get yourself comfortable wherever you are. Inhale deeply. As you exhale, just imagine your roots growing from your tailbone down into the earth. Let those roots spiral down into the ground beneath you, into the earth seed chakra. Let the earth hold you. You were never meant to hold it all alone. You are rooted. You are safe. And from this root, you will rise. So, let's get into it a little bit. Before I get into the intro, I just wanted to dive a little bit deeper into what I was starting before our drop in, which is that, I know if you guys have been following along for a while, I really had to surrender everything to get to where I am now. I just surrendered my bodybuilding. I really had to surrender kind of my coaching where it was at. And somebody lovely from my church said something to me when that happened, right after I had the vision with Jesus. And she said, God's going to give it back to you. If it's meant to be yours, he'll give it back to you. And I was like, I'm not worried. And I wasn't worried. I was just kind of flying by the seat of my pants. I've just been surrendering deeper and deeper into the spiral of knowing. And this weekend it just clicked. It's really wild to me. I listened to my gut. I was very tired because I had to take my daughter to the hospital the day before on Saturday. And she had cellulitis, it seems. Antibiotics have worked. She is good. Or she appears to be good now. Today is Wednesday as I record this, so it's taken a few days of really strong antibiotics for it to finally start to really look like it's going away. But she does look much better. But anyways, we were in the ER for 5 hours, which is not that bad really, because I'm coming from Ontario where that would be a short wait. But it's still not awesome. I was just tired. And so that I got home and I told my husband, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to go to church tomorrow. I prefer if we just chill. I'm going to honor what I need. I'm going to do an extra long meditation. I'm just going to honor the fact that I really just need to rest right now. And I did that. And instead of going to church, I did contemplative prayer, and meditation with God. And I then had so many downloads in the afternoon, and it came back to me. In the sense that God gave me back. He gave me back the nutrition, the functional nutrition. I've always talked about endometriosis because that's something that I have. PCOS is near and dear to my heart. Any sort of fertility stuff, even though I've been also very much about building muscle and perimenopause and all these things as I get older, everything clicked for me. And if you don't know the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, she talks about, there is pages missing. I wonder where those pages are. She talks about the 7 layers of reaching enlightenment. And I really think it's through the 7 deadly sins. I really do. So anyways, I just had this download come in and I was given all this information and an understanding of how to wrap that around with my, functional nutrition, and we're back baby. So we're back to also having a little bit of nutrition in all of this chaos. So God gave it back to me. I'm going to say thank you. He gave it back to me with this blueprint that I literally never would have thought to put together. But I guess that's what you do when you keep surrendering. So anyways, today's episode is called The Body Was Never the Problem, Why Your Nervous System is the first portal. So if you've ever felt like your body is failing you, no matter how clean you eat or how many tens of thousands, it feels like, supplements you're taking or how many protocols you follow, and nothing seems to stick. Nothing seems to stick, and maybe nothing seems to even get traction. It's not your fault. You are not broken. You're just spiraling through the wrong starting point. Because healing doesn't always begin with food. It begins with safety. And I try to tell my girls, my women that I've worked with over the years, this so much. Like, your body is only going to, your nervous system's only going to allow you to get what it's ready to feel, you know? Like, if it doesn't feel safe and you're trying to heal it, it's going to fight back, right? So it really does begin with safety. It begins with surrender and with the nervous system. So today, I'm going to show you, or I want to show you, how that nervous system of yours, the one that the world ignored and tends to ignore, might be the first portal of your spiral back home. And so we're going to dive into that a little bit, into the nervous system. You know, I love nervous system regulation. My favorite things to use for myself are breath work, meditation, you know, their yoga, amazing, stretching, you know, just like maybe like an extra long bubble bath, you know, the things that allow you to put yourself in a parasympathetic state. So your nervous system controls literally everything in your body, from your digestion to your hormone signaling, and everything's just intertwined to your ability to sleep, repair, and reproduce. So taking care of your nervous system is a very underrated thing. To be honest, it's got to be the first thing you really start paying attention to, because like I said before, no matter how many supplements, no matter how many protocols you take or are given, it's not going to stick until your nervous system, until your body feels like home and it feels safe enough to heal. And if you've been watching previous episodes, you know that I early on in my spiral to God, I came up with the knowing that, I don't even know how that just popped in, but like co-regulation. We were never really meant to co-regulate on our own. We're meant to co-regulate with God, and it's been forgotten for sure. And you don't have to call it God. I'm going back to that because like so many people get stuck on the God. You can call it source, universe. I really don't care, and neither does God. The only people that are fighting over the actual label is our human ego. So just let that shit go. Let it go. Most women are living in a chronic state of survival, fight, flight, or freeze, without even realizing it. And I will say there are so many women that I've worked with in the past that have been like, oh, I don't have any stress. And I'm like, honey, like, look at the symptoms that your body is showing us right now. There's no such thing. We're really underestimating. We're underestimating the amount of stress we're on, and we're overestimating how cool we are at holding it all in. If you remember in my earlier episodes at the beginning of this podcast, I had a huge endo flare-up that I mentioned. I don't think I went into deep detail into an episode, but like I had been like surface level coasting and feeling like I had all my shit together, and that shit adds up. And so that I had one of the worst flare-ups I've had, like in life, but also the worst flare-up since I started being asymptomatic. So yeah, we really overestimate how much pretending we're cool actually allows our nervous system to be cool. So don't think that you can't fake this one until you make it, unfortunately. So some signs of a dysregulated nervous system can be you wake up anxious or you wake up wired. Your digestion is unpredictable no matter what you eat. So you've maybe been on a bunch of protocols and nothing ever sticks, nothing ever fixes the problem. You're bloated, you've got diarrhea, you've got constipation, it's just all over the place and there's no rhyme or reason to it. You feel on edge or easily overwhelmed. I'm feeling on edge today, let me tell you. The closer I spiral in, and right now I'm doing a fast in phase 2 of it. Last week, I'm going to say like the first week didn't really count as the fast, but the first week was just eliminating processed foods. And this week I've like narrowed my eating window to only 4 hours, and I'm going fully plant-based. And let me tell you, the closer I spiral into God and like this fast, the longer I'm on it, like the more flare-ups I have, like the more, it's almost like in fasting, you have an opportunity, you have more triggers and more opportunities to in the moment choose God or choose love if you don't want to look at it like God, which is absolutely fine. You know, you don't have to say God right now. You can say love or fear. That's cool. You crash in the afternoon. How many people are, that's like, you know, our nervous system, like I said earlier, it affects not only our digestion, but our hormones. And so when you start to have that afternoon crash, it's a good indicator, especially if it's a regular thing for you, where you're like, oh, 2-3 o'clock hits and you need a nap, or you need a quadruple Americano. That's like 4 espressos, right? Anyways, that's a good indication that your nervous system is telling you, hey, I'm not safe. I'm not safe in this body. Can we give ourselves some love and some nurturing and come back home? Maybe you feel disconnected from your body, but also hyper aware of your symptoms. Do any of these sound familiar? Let me tell you, this is not about willpower or your mindset. It's about your biology. And sometimes our body gets stuck in a stress response, and when it does, it will shut down digestion. You know, when you're in fight or flight, and you're in fight survival mode, your body literally automatically shuts off the things that it doesn't need. And digestion is one of them, right? Because digestion, like actually digesting food, is not really something that's keeping you like in the moment life or death situation. It starts to prioritize cortisol over progesterone, because cortisol is actually not a bad thing. It's there to help mitigate the stress response. And so then your body starts pumping out cortisol instead of the progesterone, which can over time lead to cycle issues. Right? It can lead to fertility issues, because if your progesterone is low, then you're not able to keep a viable pregnancy. You can start to see that you're like visually holding on to more inflammation and even fat as protection. You can see that your body composition is changing. It can even go so far as to start creating food sensitivities simply because your gut is not functioning properly. Isn't that wild? Right? And that's why a lot of times people will come to me and they'll be like, I can't eat this and that. But once we go through some protocols, and once we figure out, a lot of it is like nervous system regulation. And once we learn how to feel safe, and then we heal the gut, maybe you have a leaky gut, maybe it's bacterial overgrowth, whatever it is, then over time, healing that, you should be able to, in theory, unless it's some sort of actual allergy, you should over time be able to eat the things that are causing food sensitivities. And this is why so many women say, I've done everything right and it's still not working, because you can do everything right. And maybe even the protocols work for a hot second, and then you go back to feeling unsafe. And if you don't feel safe in your body is going to go right back to, to prioritizing cortisol over progesterone. It's going to go, and in turn, cortisol will lead to inflammation. So it's one trigger after another. So if you don't feel safe in your body, it's not changing anything. The body will not ever heal when it feels threatened. It heals only when it feels safe. And here's why embodiment work has to come into play as well. Somatic tools aren't just trendy, they are essential. And they don't need to be complicated. Your healing might start with pausing for 3 breaths before eating. I always tell clients, like as a starting point, because right off the bat, eating in a dysregulated state, right? So if you're stressed and you go and you sit at the table, you're not going to get the nutrients. You're not going to absorb nutrients to your best ability. You're not going to get everything you require from that meal. You're probably going to be eating faster, not chewing enough. And then that's also going to cause poor digestion. So there's like one thing after another. So the first thing that I tell clients to do is, okay, before a meal, I said 3 breaths, but I usually say 4. Take 4 box breaths. So if you know what that is, you could do it with a 4-second. Just think 4. Anyways, 4 seconds in, a 4-second hold, a 4-second exhale, and a 4-second pause before your next breath. So In, hold, out, pause, in, and so on, right? So doing that 4 times, 4 deep, deep box breaths before you pick up the fork or the spoon or whatever it is you're eating. Maybe it's with your hands. Maybe you went to Medieval Times in Toronto. Who remembers that? I went there for my 18th birthday, I think it was, or 19th. I was so excited, and they just give you like a full-on meal, and all you get are your hands to go at it. Another easy one is like just gently shaking, like shaking out the stress. You underestimate what you're holding on to. Stretching in the morning, I have been doing Pilates or yoga, like even if it's like a short little while, like every single morning, and it has helped so much. You really are underestimating those things. And then I also add like breathing between exercises, like even if it's like a couple like deep breaths, and it makes a difference. Even just being cognizant, being not hyper aware, we don't want to be hyper aware, but being aware of ourselves and noticing where the tension lives in your body. And just then like breathing into it, stretching into it if it's somewhere where you can stretch. Just where you put your attention is where your energy goes, right? And that's where we want to bring to our awareness what needs to shift. That's how neuroscience works, so that we can do it. So even just in that moment, closing your eyes where you feel the tension and just sitting with that tension and breathing into it. A lot of times our life or whatever turns into clusterfucks because we're ignoring these things that need some TLC, and that oftentimes just sitting with the pain before it turns into something else is really important. So you could do, I love, and this is a little bit of somatics in a way, and it's a little bit of breath work in a way, and a little bit of meditation even. You don't need it to be guided, but before you go to bed every night, you can close your eyes and you can do a quick body scan, start from the top of your head and just slowly scan down. And anytime you feel tension or you feel discomfort, breathe into that area until it starts to soften. And human design, your girl loves human design. This will give us an even more of a nuance when it comes to this. For example, if you happen to be an emotional authority, which I've got a lot in my house, I'm not one, but I have lots. You're not meant to make fast decisions. Try to tell that to Freya, which means rushing. You don't want to be rushing, or you don't want urgency. It can inherently make you feel dysregulated. So knowing that, and honoring that, even though it's not for myself, I know I've got a lot of emotional authorities in my house. My husband and Freya and Emery. I guess it's 50-50 now, which is that's what they say it is, 50-50. We finally made it to 50-50. So yes, there is those 3. I'll ask them a question, unless it's something silly, like, what do you want for dinner? Like, if it's something that, needs to be sat with, which is most decisions outside of what are you going to eat for dinner, I let them sit with it. And I say, okay, this is what I'm thinking about doing. Sit with it. Let me know. I'll ask about it later. And so I invite you then, while we're in the spirit of Christ consciousness, and we're also in the spirit of spreading love, and that is all, to do that for the people around you. The people that specifically are emotional authorities. Take that extra step. And because maybe they don't know that they need that. Maybe they don't realize that. Take that extra step and give it to them. If you're a projector, overworking burns you the F out. And burnout's going to tax your adrenals, which is going to impact your hormone health even more. And this is beautiful because I have part of what was downloaded to me from God in terms of this was, how do I take these 7 deadly sins, and then how do I figure out how they manifest themselves within human design? So that's really random side note. Now I kind of feel like I did not, however, have to do a bunch of drugs to get this, but I don't know if you know the story about human design and Ra, who came up with a system, but he went into a trance essentially for, I want to say, a week or something, and then woke up and it was like all over a whiteboard or something, or the walls even. I don't know why he'd have a whiteboard in his place in Ibiza, but I did not. But I kind of feel that understanding, because that's how it just like comes in. Just comes in. It's like, okay, you need to do this, and you're like, okay, God, take the wheel. But back to human design. The point that I'm trying to make here is that understanding your design and the design of the people that you love around you gives you a way to live in alignment and to help them live in alignment with your actual energy system, not someone else's expectations. So it's really important to honor those things. I feel as though, and I came across human design after I had already been pretty in alignment and had like built my business up, and then I built it and I was like, oh, that's why it worked so well, was because I literally just listened to my gut. I listened to those things that were hell yeses, and I just kept doing them, and I, left jobs that were cushy and comfortable, and I said, see ya. And then it just fell into place. Maybe not overnight, but it did. It took a lot of, from the time took about a year and a half of like a little discomfort. So, it's just, the point is, like, I came across human design afterwards, and I was like, oh, that is how I've gotten to where I am. And now that I'm spiraling in this remembrance, I look back and I just see all the dots interconnecting. And human design is a beautiful way for you to know how to start listening to yourself, start honoring yourself, start listening to the unique way that you're going to hear God's voice. And yes, so it's a good thing. So basically, at the end of the day, here's the truth that no one told you. You were never meant to heal by punishing your flesh. You were never meant to starve your way to peace or micromanage your systems into silence. And I think as women, we have spent hundreds of years, thousands of years doing this. That model, the one rooted in control and shame, is a literal distortion. The model of the 7 deadly sins is distortion, because it's shaming you. And let me tell you, if I've learned anything in the last few months of spiraling in deep, is that every quote unquote bad thing that you do, or every time somebody triggers you, is a literal portal and gateway closer to God. And when you start seeing it that way, it puts the love back into it and takes all fear out of it, because when you start to surrender to God and actually know Him within you, nothing causes fear for you. Anyways, I can't remember what the second one was, and I'm going to blame it on fasting, and I'm sorry. Maybe it'll come to me later. Maybe it won't. I don't know. But anyways, the point is, the model of that shame and distortion and shame control model of even parenting and all that, it is the distortion. It's not the sin that's the distortion. It's the way that we allow it to control ourselves. Oh, that's where I was going with it. When we allow it to start being love instead of fear, then we allow it back in. We allow ourselves to heal, right? So it's not only giving you an opportunity to step out of fear and antichrist, or the devil, if you will, whatever you want to call it, ego, and putting you in that moment, looking at all of these things from a automatic love and compassion, because you're like, okay, yes, bring on these triggers, bring on this, if I happen to slip up and sin, great, maybe not great, but great, I get an opportunity to spiral in closer to God. And then every time you do, it gets you further and further into healing. And that's what you want. And that goes healing your nervous system, because the closer to God you are, the better you are at co-regulating. And it goes with healing your body, right? Because your nervous system is giving you physical ailments. And the longer and longer you ignore it, which is why my Nourish the Spiral also has a few, I'm just putting finishing touches up on some self-paced courses that are around endometriosis, PCOS, and perimenopause. I honestly know, I have entered perimenopause. I do have some days where I feel some things happening. You can tell, I'm going to be 38 in exactly a month. And I had cancer, and because of that cancer when I was a kid, I had a chemo that would specifically likely give me menopause early. So like I can see the symptoms. I know they're likely there, but they're very like light. But then there's also people that have like every symptom in the book. And I had endometriosis at a time where, and I say at a time because I really don't have a lot of flare-ups other than that last one in like March. But when you ignore yourself and you silence yourself and you ignore your body's nose and you ignore your body's signs over and over and over again, and you don't decide to start to learn to feel safe within yourself, then that's when these things turn into dis-eases. There's a reason why it's called a dis-ease. It's a dis-ease. And when you feel uneasy long enough, it turns into a disease. And that's the fact of it, is that when you are so disconnected from self, and I've like tied in all the layers of all the things, but when you feel so disconnected from yourself, you can't feel safe enough to heal. And for those of us that have chosen to ignore the signs for a long time, like myself at some point, we end up with things like endometriosis. We end up like with things like PCOS. And you know, I think there's also like a generational layer, right? So if your mom ignored it long enough, then it's passed on with your genes, but also like you get to choose to rise and say, hell no. Like we're pretty confident my mom had it. She was never diagnosed, but like she also had lots of signs of the endo. And I was like, no, we're not doing this. And I literally lived asymptomatically for the last 13 years for the most part. So other than that one flare up, which was very not nice. But anyways, my point is we then manifest these things. It turns like a distortion of mind into a physical distortion. It's funny because I just recorded a little snippet for my TikTok that was about Revelation 13. And as I was recording it, I had pre-written the script. I went like off the cuff in the middle because I was like, isn't it interesting that it was then like what I'm saying had been physically manifested in the world, right? And so a lot of times the things that are happening in our minds start to become physically manifested in the world. And I don't know if this is going to make you cry a little bit, because maybe it will. I don't know. But I had a call with a woman about a week ago, I think it was. And she was asking, like, how do I get to where you are in this, like, spiral of remembering? How do I see Jesus? How do I, like, start hearing God? And I gave her some tips. But I also said, like, she mentioned something about, like, being really upset over Trump. And I was like, or, like, not even Trump, but, like, people that were quote-unquote Christians that were defending all of the atrocities that he was doing. And I was like, okay, well, so they're like the physical manifestation of, you know, the wounded piece of us that still needs to go find it in the Bible. You know, I'm saying something, you're like, okay, well, give me the scripture, because if I don't have the scripture, then I don't know, you know? And so they are using scripture and weaponizing it to support something that you think is horrendous, but they're like the physical manifestation of that little instant in your head that's still there that you haven't quite healed. So isn't that interesting? That the mind really does, and this is me going way into like way out of the matrix, so I won't go any farther out of the matrix for you in this moment, because I don't think a lot of people are ready to hear that deep out of the matrix. I'm like in that 1 foot on the one side of the veil, 1 foot in the other. And so a lot of times my brain goes into, oh, well, look at it like this, because everything, all timelines and everything has already been dismantled for me. And then I'm like, wait, people are not going to understand exactly what I'm saying. So I have to come back to the matrix for a hot minute. But yeah, I want you to understand that I truly do believe it's time to reclaim what's been lost here. Your symptoms are not failures. You need to start seeing them as portals, as signals. That you need to start seeing every flare-up of endo or every crash or every craving as a whisper that says, hey, return to me. That is the spiral of nourishment, a path where your nervous system leads you. And it is trying to lead you, you're just not listening. And where even gluttony or fatigue or hormonal chaos become actual invitations to start feeling again. And when you begin to listen, to follow the spiral, like the portals back in, instead of fighting them, you don't just heal, you're going to return. You're going to return to your breath. You're going to return to your body. You're going to return to God or source or universe, whatever you want to call it. And from within, you're going to rise. And that's what we want, baby. That's the magic. So if this episode opens something for you, which hopefully it did, I'd love to hear from you on Instagram. I am Jessie K or CAE. Or you can go to From Within She Rises on Instagram. And if you felt something today, if something resonated and you were like, yes, I need to start listening to my body, I need to start learning how to feel safe, then share it with a friend, leave a review, or come find me on Instagram. Like I said, tell me what landed in your body with this episode. Thank you for showing up for yourself in this way. Thank you. I love you. And I will see you in the next spiral.